And we are in the last section of chapter 1. It is section 7, representing functions as graphs. Begins on page 43. So we're going to take functions. We've been talking about them a little bit, basic functions, and we're going to be working on graphing. And so we've already talked about x's and y's being inputs and outputs. And they have about 4 different things we call them. Inputs, outputs. Which one is the dependent variable? Paul? The output. And that corresponds with which letter? The y. And so the independent variable are the inputs, right? And they go with the x's. I hear you saying that. So once again, we could use different letters. And in the real world samples and formulas, we use different letters. But generally speaking, we use x and y for just discovering things about different kinds of graphs and functions. So we have our x and y's. These are ordered pairs, which are points, right? And so once we have a list of them, we can graph them. And we can look to see if there's a beautiful pattern in the graph. We can actually see patterns in the numbers too. So just in the tables we can look for patterns. And that sometimes helps us to, it often helps us to create the equation. So functions can be represented in different ways. As a verbal rule, we saw that yesterday. I could just say that, the output is the input plus 25. So I could just write that for you in words or say it in words. It could also be an equation. Another word for equation is a rule. And then definitely we could put these things in a table. A function is, we saw yesterday, functions and relations in tables. And then finally, what we often do with them is take them to a graph. There also will be times you're given the graph and you're going to be creating the rule or the equation for what you see in a graph. Okay? We actually saw the same verbal rule yesterday. The output is twice the input. So let's put it into this verbal rule, into a equation and into a table, and let's graph it. All of those things. So draw yourself a coordinate plane. Start making a table. We can begin with just basic numbers near the point of origin. And so if the output is twice the input, and the input is 1, what is the output? 2. And if the input is 2, the output is 4. And the input is 3. And when the input is 4, 8. So beautiful table. We said when you write the rule, you are saying, what am I operating on x with? What is the operation that gives you this output that you see? Jake? 2. Good. So it's a multiplication of 2. Basic function. So let's graph it. Now you're doing this in your notes. So just draw a little coordinate plane. X and Y are always labeled. You do not have to write x-axis and y-axis, but that's what those are. You must label them. You need to have at least one number in each direction so that I can understand your scale, right? And so now I see on this coordinate plane, each blue line is 1 unit. And then you graph. In this early section, if they hand you a domain like this, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they're asking you to graph that particular set of points, you're only graphing that particular set of points, which is kind of strange. Because as we get further into algebra, we usually are graphing all possible solutions. which includes connecting the points, right? But if they're saying only graph this domain, then you're only graphing 1 at 2, 2 at 4, 3 at 6, and 4 at 8. And that's what it looks like. Can anybody draw the line that would go through? Then you need to kind of erase it. Because you're just being asked to graph this set of 4 points, and that's it. Now, if somebody gave me this to graph, say, graph that, y equals 2x, and they didn't tell me what independent values to put in, what x's, then I would put a line, because I would put every possible solution. You understand the difference? So, if you were asked just to graph this using any x's you want, you would show every possible solution with a line, arrows on both ends. But if you are, both ends, if you are asked just to graph these these four x values with their partners, right? Those 4 points, you simply graph these discrete points. This is called a discrete graph rather than a continuous, because you have individual points and you weren't asked to show all values. Okay? Kind of a hard, it is a bit tough, but actually it's easier. You don't have to draw the line. Okay, try it again with this and we'll come back when you have done it and check your work. Okay, once again you're asked for the discrete points using that domain they provide. So Ronnie's going to show us. She says she's going to start with a table. Which is good. Okay, let's back up to 3. When you input 3, 2 times 3 is? 6. And 6 minus 1 is? 5. There you go. Input 4. Think about it. Good. Input, yep, very good. Okay, so do you notice a pattern in this table, Ronnie? And then what kind of a pattern do you see as you look at the outputs there? You're adding 2. See that? You're adding 2. But we started with adding 2 from the 1 rather than from 0. I mean, in the previous one, we were adding 2 as well. See that? Interesting. Okay, go ahead and plot these. You're going to plot the individual points. That's good. That's okay. She wants to move it a little up. Can I do it? It's hard to be really precise on the smart board, but there you go. And right on, she's trying to hit 5, 9, and that looks really nice. And we leave it discrete, so very good. Good job. Questions? So that's what you're practicing. We have a lot of time in class for you to begin this assignment, and I'm here to help you. This is your assignment for 1.7, but it doesn't stop there. Tomorrow you have a test. So you're going to do the review section, odds, in the back of chapter 1. I'm choosing for you to do odds because you can check all of those. And the day before a test, I always want you to check your work. Right? So that's written down here. You don't need to do an online practice test, but I put it here because you could do one at Class Zone. So if you wanted to practice and study, you could do an online practice test. You don't have to. It's an option. But you do need to do the review. Okay? Did you hear that, Nina? What? You need to do this review and the assignment.